Captain Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he walked through the narrow corridors of the UE's Defiance. The ship creaked and groaned around him like an old house in a storm. Every surface showed signs of repair work. Patches of different colored metal covered the walls where old hull breaches had been sealed. The lighting flickered sometimes, and the air recycling system made strange noises that kept new crew members awake at night. Jake had been commanding this vessel for 3 years now. He knew every sound it made, every weakness in its armor, and every trick needed to keep it running. The Defiance was not a beautiful ship. It had been built from the remains of 5 different vessels that were destroyed in various accidents and conflicts. Earth's shipbuilders had welded them together with whatever materials they could find. The result looked more like a flying junkyard than a military vessel. The bridge was no different from the rest of the ship. The control panels were a mix of old and new technology. Some displays were ancient screens that had been salvaged from decommissioned cargo ships. Others were modern holographic interfaces that had been donated by civilian tech companies. The captain's chair was actually a comfortable leather seat that had once belonged in the cockpit of an atmospheric transport. Commander Ben Carter was standing at the communication station when Jake entered the bridge. Ben was a good officer who had served on real military ships before being assigned to the Defiance. He never complained about the condition of their vessel, but Jake could see the disappointment in his eyes sometimes. Ben deserved to serve on a proper warship, not this collection of spare parts. "Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command," Ben said. His voice was steady, but Jake could hear the tension underneath. Priority transmissions were never good news. "Put it through to my ready room," Jake replied. He had converted a small storage closet into his private office. It was barely large enough for a desk and 2 chairs, but it was the only place on the ship where he could have a private conversation. "Admiral." Lisa Grant's face appeared on the small screen mounted on the wall. She looked tired and worried. Lisa had been fighting to get better ships and equipment for Earth's defense fleet for years. The politicians always promised improvements, but the money never seemed to be available. Earth's colonies were spread across dozens of star systems, but the home planet could barely afford to maintain a handful of proper military vessels. "Jake, I need you to get your ship ready for combat operations," Lisa said without any greeting. "We've got a situation developing that could affect the entire solar system." Jake felt his stomach drop. The Defiance was not built for serious combat. It had weapons, but they were mostly salvaged from other ships or converted civilian equipment. The shield generators were old and unreliable. The armor was thin in too many places. If someone wanted them to fight, things must be very bad indeed. "What kind of situation, Admiral?" Jake asked. Lisa's expression grew even more serious. 3 days ago, a massive alien fleet entered our outer sensor range. They're calling themselves the Zephyrian Empire. Yesterday, they sent us a message." The screen changed to show the image of an alien creature. It was tall and thin with gray skin and large black eyes. Its face was angular, almost insect-like, and its mouth was filled with sharp teeth. The creature wore an elaborate uniform covered in medals and decorations. "I am Grand Admiral Kexter of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet," the alien said in perfect English. Its voice was cold and mechanical, obviously translated by some kind of computer system. "You pathetic humans have exactly 30 of your days to surrender unconditionally to the Empire. Your primitive civilization will be absorbed into our domain. Your people will serve the Empire or be eliminated." The alien's image paused, and its black eyes seemed to stare directly at Jake through the screen. Then it continued speaking. "We have observed your feeble attempts at military preparation. Your ships are built from scrap metal and spare parts. Your weapons are primitive toys. Your technology is centuries behind our own. We could destroy your entire fleet with a single vessel, But the Empire prefers to be merciful to inferior species who recognize their place. Jake felt anger building in his chest. He had heard aliens speak with contempt about humans before, but never with such complete dismissal. This Kexter was talking about Earth's defenders like they were children playing with broken toys. Alien Commander gestured with one clawed hand. Look upon the might of the Empire and despair. Your scrap metal vessels are no match for our dreadnoughts. Your improvised weapons cannot penetrate our shields. Your untrained crews cannot stand against our experienced warriors. Surrender now, and some of you may be allowed to live as servants. The image changed to show the Zephyrian fleet. Jake's breath caught in his throat. He had seen large fleets before, but nothing like this. Dozens of massive ships moved in perfect formation through space. Each vessel was sleek and powerful, covered in weapon ports and shield generators. The smallest of them was larger than Earth's biggest space station. The flagship was enormous, easily 5 times the size of anything humans had ever built. Its hull gleamed like polished silver, and energy weapons lined its sides like the spines of some deadly creature. Jake counted at least 12 of the massive dreadnoughts, supported by what looked like 50 or 60 smaller cruisers. Fighter craft swarmed around the larger ships like angry insects. As you can see, Kexter's voice continued, resistance is futile. The Empire has conquered 17 star systems. We have destroyed the fleets of civilizations far more advanced than your own. The proud Altarian Defense Force lasted less than 6 hours against our might. The Kovan Imperial Navy was reduced to cosmic dust in a single day. The alien commander's image returned to the screen. His expression showed nothing but cold arrogance. You humans amuse us with your determination to fight. Your ships look like they were assembled in a scrapyard by children. We have shared images of your fleet with our crews for entertainment. They find your vessels so primitive that they are actually humorous. Jake's hands clenched into fists. The alien was not just threatening Earth. He was mocking every human who had worked to build their defenses. Every engineer who had stayed up all night trying to make salvaged equipment work. Every crew member who risked their lives in ships that were held together with determination and prayer. In 30 days, the Empire will return to claim this system. Kexter concluded, if you have not surrendered by then, we will demonstrate why resistance is meaningless. Your scrap metal ships will burn like paper in the void. Your crews will die knowing that their sacrifice accomplished nothing. Choose wisely, humans. The Empire's patience is not unlimited. The transmission ended, leaving Jake staring at a blank screen. He sat in silence for several minutes, trying to process what he had just seen. Earth was facing an enemy that outnumbered them by at least 10 to 1. Worse, that enemy had technology and experience that made human defenses look like toys. Jake returned to the bridge to find his senior staff waiting for him. Commander Carter was there, along with Dr. Kate Sullivan, the ship's chief engineer. Kate was a former college professor who had joined the fleet when her research funding was cut. She was brilliant, but she had a tendency to experiment with dangerous modifications to their ship systems. I take it you all saw the transmission, Jake said. Hard to miss it, Ben replied. They broadcast it to every human colony in the system. Half the civilian population is probably packing up to evacuate right now. Dr. Sullivan stepped forward. She was a small woman with graying hair, but her eyes were bright with intelligence and determination. Captain, I've been working on some modifications to our fusion drive. If I'm right, we might be able to surprise these Zephyrians. Jake looked at his engineer with interest. Kate's modifications had saved their lives more than once, though they had also nearly killed them twice. What kind of modifications? The kind that might give us a fighting chance, Kate replied with a slight smile. These aliens think our ships are junk. Maybe it's time we showed them what human junk can really do. The next morning brought chaos to Earth's solar system. Every communication channel buzzed with panicked messages from colony worlds and mining stations. People were trying to evacuate their families to safer systems, but there were not enough transport ships to carry everyone who wanted to leave. The lucky ones found passage on cargo freighters. The rest had to stay and hope that Earth's military could somehow perform a miracle. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the Defiance's engineering section, watching Dr. Kate Sullivan work on her modifications. She had torn apart half of their fusion drive system and was rebuilding it with parts that looked like they came from completely different types of machines. Cables and pipes ran in strange directions. New computer systems had been bolted onto the walls next to equipment that was older. Then Jake himself. "Are you sure this will work?" Jake asked as Kate welded another connection into place. Sparks flew from her torch, and the smell of hot metal filled the air. "Honestly, I have no idea," Kate replied without looking up from her work. "The theory is sound, but we have never tested anything like this before. If I am right, we will be able to move faster than any ship the Zephyrians have ever seen. If I am wrong, we might blow up the moment we try to start the engines." Jake was not entirely comfortable with those odds, but they did not have many choices. Earth's conventional military strategy would never work against the alien fleet. Their only hope was to do something so unexpected that the enemy would not know how to respond. In the ship's communications room, Commander Ben Carter was coordinating with other vessels in Earth's defense fleet. The conversations were not encouraging. Most of the ship captains were experienced officers, but they were all dealing with the same problems. Their vessels were old, their weapons were outdated, and their crews were not trained for large-scale fleet combat. "The Mars Defense Force has 23 operational ships," Ben reported to Jake. "Most of them are converted mining vessels. Governor Peter Hayes says they will fight, but he does not think they can hold the planet for more than a few hours." Jake nodded grimly. Mars was one of humanity's most important colonies, with industrial facilities that produced equipment for the entire solar system. If the Zephyrians captured it intact, they would have everything they needed to build a permanent base in human space. What Jake did not know was that Governor Hayes was planning something that went far beyond conventional defense. Deep beneath the Martian surface, thousands of workers were installing massive railgun systems in hidden bunkers. The guns were built from mining equipment that had been designed to move asteroids. If they worked properly, they could launch projectiles at incredible speeds with enough force to damage even heavily armored ships. The work was dangerous and exhausting. The construction crews were working around the clock in shifts, trying to complete the installations before the Zephyrian deadline. Many of the workers were volunteers who had never built military equipment before. They were farmers, mechanics, shop owners, and teachers who had dropped everything to help defend their world. On Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, Captain Amy Walsh was dealing with her own challenges. Her ship, the U.S. Wolverine, was one of the strangest vessels in Earth's fleet. It had been built from the hull of an old cargo hauler that was damaged beyond normal repair. Instead of scrapping it, the shipyard workers had turned it into something completely new. The Wolverine looked like no military ship that had ever been designed. Its hull was covered with industrial equipment that had been converted into weapons. Mining lasers had been modified to serve as defensive guns. Cargo handling systems had been turned into missile launchers. The ship even had a set of mechanical arms that were normally used for moving freight containers. Amy had been a mining ship captain before the military recruited her. She knew how to make old equipment work in ways it was never intended to be used. Her crew was a mix of former miners, cargo handlers, and maintenance technicians. They were not traditional military personnel, but they understood how to fix things with whatever materials they had available. "Captain, we are receiving another transmission from the Zephyrian fleet," reported her communications officer, a young man named Danny who had been working on cargo ships since he was 16. Amy sighed. The aliens had been broadcasting propaganda, messages every few hours since their arrival. Each message was designed to break human morale by describing how previous civilizations had fallen to the Empire. The Zephyrians seemed to enjoy telling stories about their past victories in great detail. "Put it on the main screen," Amy said reluctantly. Grand Admiral Kexter appeared again, his cold black eyes staring out from the display. Behind him, Amy could see the bridge of his flagship. It was enormous and filled with alien crew members, working at stations that looked more like art than functional equipment. "Humans of the solar system," the alien commander began in his mechanical voice. "We have been monitoring your pathetic attempts at military preparation. Your ships continue to amuse our crews with their primitive construction. We have decided to share some images of your fleet with our entertainment networks. Civilizations across the Empire are laughing at your scrap metal vessels." The screen changed to show various human ships. Amy recognized several of them, including her own Wolverine. The aliens had added their own commentary to the images, pointing out what they considered to be flaws and weaknesses in human ship design. They mocked the mismatched hull plating, the improvised weapon systems, and the obvious signs of repair. "Look at this vessel," Kexter's voice continued as the camera focused on a converted mining ship. "The humans have attached industrial equipment to a cargo hauler and call it a warship. Our youngest cadets could destroy it with training. Weapons." Amy felt her anger growing as the alien mocked her people's efforts. Every ship in that footage represented months or years of hard work by human engineers and construction crews. They had built their fleet with limited resources and unlimited determination. The fact that their ships looked different from alien designs did not make them inferior. The transmission continued with more examples of human vessels that the Zephyrians found amusing. They showed footage of repair work being done in orbital shipyards, commenting on how primitive human tools and techniques appeared to be. They even mocked the clothing and appearance of human workers, calling them crude and uncivilized. But something unexpected was happening across human space as people watched these broadcasts. Instead of becoming discouraged, many humans were getting angry. The alien mockery was having the opposite effect from what Kexter intended. People who had been thinking about evacuating were now volunteering to help with the war effort. On Earth, civilian engineers were offering their services to military shipyards. The designers who built atmospheric aircraft were working with spaceship crews to improve human vessels. Computer programmers were developing new targeting systems. Even children were collecting scrap metal that could be used for repairs. And construction. Dr. Kate Sullivan was one of many people who found motivation in the alien broadcasts. Every time she heard Kexter describe human technology as primitive, she worked a little harder on her modifications. The Zephyrians thought they understood human capabilities, but they were basing their judgments on appearance rather than performance. "Captain," Kate called to Jake as he entered the engineering section, "I think I have figured out how to give us a real advantage." Jake walked over to examine her work. The fusion drive system now looked completely different from its original design. New components had been integrated throughout the engine assembly, and the control systems had been completely rebuilt. "The aliens are used to fighting enemies who follow conventional military doctrine," Kate explained. "Their ships are designed to engage in predictable battle formations at standard ranges. But what if we do not fight the way they expect?" She activated a holographic display that showed her theoretical performance calculations. According to her numbers, the modified drive system could accelerate their ship at rates that should be impossible for a vessel of their size and mass. "If this works, we can move in ways that their targeting systems will not be able to predict," Kate continued. "We can attack from angles they do not expect and retreat before they can respond. The key is to be so unpredictable that their superior technology becomes useless." Jake studied the calculations carefully. The theory seemed sound, but the risks were enormous. If Kate's modifications failed during combat, the Defiance would be dead in space while enemy ships closed in for the kill. How long until we can test it? He asked. The modification should be complete in another 2 days, Kate replied. But we will only get one chance to find out if it works. If we run a test, the aliens might detect the energy signatures and realize what we are doing. Jake made his decision. Do it. We will test the system during our first engagement with the enemy. If it works, we will have surprised them. If it fails, we were probably going to die anyway. As Kate returned to her work, Jake realized that humanity's entire strategy was based on the same principle. They could not match the Zephyrians in terms of technology or numbers, but they could be so unpredictable that conventional military tactics would not work against them. Grand Admiral Kexter stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching the tactical displays with growing impatience. The humans had been given 30 days to surrender, but only 27 had passed. The Grand Admiral was tired of waiting. He wanted to demonstrate the Empire's power before the official deadline arrived. Bring me the intelligence reports on human defensive positions, he commanded his aide, a younger Zephyrian officer named Subcommander Veltak. Reports showed what Kexter expected to see. The humans had scattered their pathetic fleet across the solar system, with small groups of ships defending each major colony. Their largest concentration was near Earth itself, but even that force consisted of fewer than 40 vessels. Most of them appeared to be converted civilian ships with improvised weapons. Sir, perhaps we should wait until the deadline as originally planned, Veltak suggested nervously. The Empire's protocols require that we honor the terms of surrender ultimatums. Kexter turned his black eyes toward his subordinate with obvious displeasure. The protocols were written for civilizations that deserved respect. These humans are barely more advanced than the primitive species we use for manual labor. They need to learn what happens when inferior beings dare to resist the Empire. The Grand Admiral studied the tactical display more carefully. One human outpost caught his attention. It was a small mining station near Jupiter called Europa Station. According to the intelligence reports, it was defended by only a single human vessel. The target was perfect for a demonstration of Imperial power. We will attack this Europa Station, Kexter decided. Send the Stellar Dominion to destroy it completely. Make sure the humans on other worlds can observe what happens. They need to understand that resistance is futile. The Stellar Dominion was one of the Empire's most powerful dreadnoughts. It was nearly 2 kilometers long and armed with enough weapons to level an entire city. Its commander, Captain Zorkith, was a veteran of dozen conquest campaigns. He had never lost a battle or failed to complete a mission. On Europa Station, Captain Amy Walsh received the warning from Earth Command with grim determination. Long-range sensors had detected a single Zephyrian dreadnought approaching their position. The massive alien ship would arrive in less than 6 hours. Danny, send a message to Earth Command, Amy told her communications officer. Tell them we understand the situation and we will do our best. Amy knew that her ship, the Wolverine, was no match for a dreadnought in conventional combat. The alien vessel outweighed them by more than 10 to 1 and had weapons that could destroy their ship with a single shot. But Amy had not survived 15 years as a mining captain by giving up when the odds were bad. Get me Chief Engineer Rodriguez, she called over the ship's intercom. Tony Rodriguez had been working on mining equipment longer than Amy had been flying ships. He was a small, quiet man who could fix anything mechanical with whatever parts he could find. He also had a talent for making industrial equipment do things it was never designed to do. Tony, I need you to prepare every piece of mining equipment on this station for immediate use, Amy said when he arrived on the bridge. And I need you to do it in a way that our visitors will not expect. Tony smiled for the first time in days. Captain, I think I know exactly what you have in mind. Europa Station had been built to process ice and minerals from Jupiter's moon. It was surrounded by automated mining platforms, ore processing facilities, and cargo handling systems. Most people would see it as industrial equipment, but Amy saw it as the components of a very large and very unconventional weapon system. Over the next few hours, Tony and his team worked frantically to prepare what Amy privately called her mining trap. The ore processing systems were modified to launch chunks of metal at high speed. The cargo handling systems were converted into missile launchers. Even the ice-cutting lasers were repositioned to serve as defensive weapons. But the most important part of Amy's plan involved the asteroid debris that surrounded Europa Station. The mining operations had been going on for decades, creating a field of rocky fragments that most ships would navigate around carefully. Amy planned to use that debris field as cover for dozens of hidden weapons platforms. When the Stellar Dominion arrived at Europa, Captain Zorkith was not impressed by what he saw. The human station looked like a typical industrial facility. The single defending ship was obviously a converted cargo hauler with improvised weapons. The entire target area could be destroyed in minutes. "Begin the attack," Zorkith ordered his weapons officer. "Destroy the station first, then finish the ship. Make sure our sensors record everything for transmission back to the fleet." The Zephyrian Dreadnought moved toward Europa Station with confident precision. Its massive weapons began charging, preparing to deliver a devastating first strike. Captain Zorkith expected the humans to either flee or surrender. Instead, the converted cargo ship began moving directly toward his much larger vessel. "The human captain must be insane," Zorkith commented to his bridge crew. "She is attacking the dreadnought with a mining ship." But as the Wolverine entered the debris field around Europa Station, something unexpected happened. The rocky fragments that had looked like random space junk suddenly revealed themselves as camouflaged weapons platforms. Dozens of hidden guns opened fire simultaneously, catching the Stellar Dominion completely by surprise. The Zephyrian ship's shields absorbed most of the initial attack, but the weapons were not finished. Tony Rodriguez had converted the mining charges used for breaking up asteroids into improvised missiles. Each one contained enough explosive power to damage a military vessel, and there were hundreds of them hidden throughout the debris field. Evasive maneuvers. Zorkith shouted as his ship was surrounded by explosions. "Return fire on those weapons platforms." But the hidden guns were small and difficult to target. Worse, they were positioned among the asteroid fragments in ways that made it dangerous for the dreadnought to use its most powerful weapons. Any shot that missed its intended target would hit the debris and create more fragments that could damage the Zephyrian ship. Captain Amy Walsh guided the Wolverine through the chaos like she was navigating a particularly difficult mining operation. She knew the location of every weapons platform and every piece of debris. Her ship twisted and turned through the field, using the cover to stay alive while the Stellar Dominion struggled to get a clear shot. "Tony, are the mining lasers ready?" Amy called over the intercom. "Ready and waiting, Captain," came the reply. Amy had saved the best surprise for last. Europa Station's industrial lasers were designed to cut through solid rock and metal. They were not military weapons, but they were incredibly powerful. Tony had spent hours positioning them to create a focused beam that could penetrate even advanced alien shields. "Fire all lasers," Amy ordered. The combined beam from 6 industrial lasers struck the Stellar Dominion's shields at exactly the same point. The Zephyrian defensive systems had been designed to absorb energy from military weapons, but they had never encountered anything like concentrated mining equipment. The shields flickered and failed, leaving the dreadnought's hull exposed. "Captain." Zorkith watched in horror as his ship's main armor began to glow red-hot under the sustained laser attack. "This is impossible," he screamed at his tactical officer. "Those are mining tools, not weapons. Sir, our shields are down." The tactical officer reported. Hull breach on decks 12 through 15. Amy did not give the aliens time to recover. The Wolverine launched every remaining missile and fired every converted mining tool that Tony had prepared. The attack was not elegant or sophisticated, but it was devastating. The proud stellar dominion, which had conquered worlds and destroyed fleets, found itself being torn apart by improvised weapons and industrial equipment. The end came quickly. A lucky shot from one of the hidden platforms struck the dreadnought's main reactor. The explosion lit up the space around Europa like a small sun, and when the light faded, nothing remained of the stellar dominion except glowing debris. Amy Walsh stood on the bridge of the Wolverine, hardly believing what had just happened. Her small mining ship had just destroyed one of the Empire's most powerful warships. The victory had cost them almost everything. Most of the weapons platforms were destroyed, the station was heavily damaged, and the Wolverine itself was running on emergency power. "Danny, send a message to Earth Command," Amy said quietly. "Tell them that Europa Station is still operational." But the real message was already spreading across human space. Every colony and outpost had monitored the battle through long-range sensors. The impossible had happened. A single human vessel, built from scrap and armed with mining equipment, had defeated a Zephyrian dreadnought. On his flagship, Grand Admiral Kexter stared at the battle reports in stunned silence. The stellar dominion had been destroyed by humans using industrial equipment as weapons. It was not just a military defeat, it was a humiliation that would be remembered throughout the Empire. "Sir, should we advance the timeline for the full invasion?" Sub-Commander Veltak asked nervously. Kexter's black eyes glowed with fury. "Yes, we attack in 3 days instead of 7. These humans have proven they are more dangerous than we thought." 3 days after the destruction of the stellar dominion, the Zephyrian Armada arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system like a storm of metal and fire. Grand Admiral Kexter had brought every available ship from the Imperial fleet. 20 massive dreadnoughts moved in perfect formation, surrounded by 60 cruisers and countless smaller vessels. The alien fleet stretched across space for thousands of kilometers, their weapons charged and ready for battle. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the enemy approach through the main view screen. Behind him, Dr. Kate Sullivan was making final adjustments to her experimental drive system. The modifications were complete, but they had never been tested under combat conditions. If Kate's calculations were wrong, the ship would tear itself apart the moment they tried to use the new engines. "All ships, this is Admiral Grant," came the voice from Earth Command. "The enemy fleet has crossed our outer defensive line. All vessels are to proceed to designated positions according to Battle Plan Gamma. Remember, we are not trying to win a conventional engagement. Our goal is to survive long enough to make them pay for every kilometer of space." Jake knew that Battle Plan Gamma was really a plan for organized retreat. Earth's military leaders had studied the recordings from Europa Station and developed new tactics based on Amy Walsh's success. Instead of meeting the aliens in direct combat, human ships would use hit-and-run attacks, unconventional weapons, and whatever advantages they could create through surprise and desperation. The first contact came at the asteroid belt, where Commander Ray Thompson had positioned his squadron of converted mining ships. Ray had been an asteroid miner for 20 years before the war started. His vessels looked like industrial equipment because that was exactly what they were. The aliens had dismissed them as non-combatants, but Ray had other plans. "Remember, boys," Ray said over the squadron communication channel, "we are not warships. We are miners. Let's show these aliens what happens when they get between us and our work." The Zephyrian advance force consisted of 6 cruisers moving ahead of the main fleet. Their job was to clear any obstacles from the path of the dreadnoughts. The cruiser captains were experienced officers who had fought in many campaigns, but they had never encountered anything like human mining operations. Ray's ships appeared. to be doing routine asteroid processing when the alien cruisers arrived. The mining vessels were using their industrial lasers to break up rocky debris, just as they had done for years. The Zephyrians ignored them completely, focusing on scanning for military targets that might pose a real threat. That was their first mistake. Now, Ray shouted, and his entire squadron opened fire simultaneously. The industrial lasers that had been cutting asteroids were suddenly focused on the alien ships. The mining charges that were used to break up rocks became improvised missiles. Even the ore hauling systems were converted into mass drivers that could launch chunks of metal at incredible speeds. The lead Zephyrian cruiser took the full force of 6 mining lasers at point-blank range. Its shields collapsed instantly, and the focused beams cut through the hull like it was made of paper. The ship broke apart in a series of explosions that lit up the asteroid field. "Impossible!" screamed the captain of the second cruiser as his ship came under attack from mining equipment that was somehow more effective than military weapons. "These are civilian vessels. How are they penetrating our shields?" But Ray Thompson did not give the aliens time to figure out what was happening. His ships scattered through the asteroid field, using the rocky debris as cover while they continued their devastating attacks. The mining vessels knew how to operate in dangerous environments. They were built to work among floating rocks and metal fragments that would destroy more delicate ships. The battle in the asteroid belt lasted only 30 minutes, but when it was over, 4 of the 6 Zephyrian cruisers had been destroyed. Ray's squadron had lost 3 ships, but they had proven that human industrial equipment could be just as deadly as purpose-built weapons. The news of the asteroid belt victory reached the main human fleet, just as Grand Admiral Kexter was deploying his dreadnoughts for the final assault on Earth. The alien commander was furious at the loss of his advance force, but he was confident that his main battle fleet could crush any human resistance. "These humans fight like savages," Kexter told his staff officers. "They have no concept of civilized warfare. We will teach them the proper way to conduct military operations." The Grand Admiral's plan was simple and traditional. His dreadnoughts would advance in formation toward Earth, destroying any human ships that tried to intercept them. Once the planet's defenses were eliminated, the occupation forces would land and the conquest would be complete. It was a strategy that had worked against 17 other civilizations, but the humans were not planning to fight like any of those other civilizations. Captain Jake Morrison received his orders from Admiral Grant just as the Zephyrian main fleet entered the inner solar system. The Defiance and 12 other ships were to attack the alien formation from an unexpected direction, using Kate Sullivan's experimental drive systems to achieve speeds that should be impossible. "Kate, are you ready?" Jake asked his chief engineer. "As ready as I can be without actually knowing if this will work," Kate replied from the engine room. "The power levels look stable, but we are pushing everything far beyond safe limits. If the containment field fails, we will have about 3 seconds to say goodbye to each other." Jake activated the ship-wide communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. We are about to test Dr. Sullivan's modifications under combat conditions. If it works, we will have a chance to surprise the enemy. If it does not work, it has been an honor serving with all of you." The moment Kate activated the new drive system, everything changed. The Defiance suddenly accelerated faster than any ship its size should be able to move. The inertial dampeners struggled to keep the crew from being crushed by the forces involved. On the bridge, Jake felt like he was being pressed into his chair by an invisible giant. But the system worked. The Defiance shot through space at incredible speed, followed by the other ships in the squadron. They moved so fast that the Zephyrian sensors could barely track them. The alien targeting computers were designed to engage enemies that followed predictable flight patterns, not ships that could change direction and speed in ways that seemed to violate the laws of physics. Incoming transmission from the lead dreadnought. reported Commander Ben Carter. "They are demanding that we identify ourselves and explain how we are achieving these velocities." Jake smiled grimly. "Tell them we are the scrap metal ships they were laughing about. Let's see if they are still amused." The human squadron struck the Zephyrian formation like a pack of wolves, attacking a herd of enormous but slow-moving animals. Jake's ships were small compared to the dreadnoughts, but they were moving so fast that their improvised weapons had incredible impact force. They fired their missiles and lasers while streaking past the alien vessels, then disappeared into space. Before the enemy could respond, the attack lasted only minutes, but it caused chaos throughout the Zephyrian fleet. Several dreadnoughts suffered serious damage from weapons that should not have been able to penetrate their shields. The alien formation began to break apart as individual captains tried to pursue the fast-moving human ships. "This is impossible." Grand Admiral Kexter raged as he watched his perfectly organized fleet turn into a scattered mess. "How are they moving so fast? Our intelligence reports said their technology was primitive." But the human attacks were just beginning. As the Zephyrian ships spread out to chase Jake's squadron, they ran into carefully positioned ambush throughout the solar system. Hidden weapons platforms that had been disguised as space debris opened fire from unexpected directions. Converted, cargo ships revealed themselves as heavily armed raiders. Even civilian transport vessels joined the battle, using their industrial equipment as improvised weapons. The most devastating surprise came from Mars itself. Governor Peter Hayes had spent weeks converting the planet's mining operations into massive weapons installations. When the Zephyrian fleet came within range, the hidden railguns emerged from underground bunkers and began firing projectiles at incredible velocities. The railgun rounds were simple chunks of metal, but they were moving so fast that they hit with the force of nuclear weapons. 3 Zephyrian dreadnoughts were destroyed in the first salvo, their hulls shattered by projectiles that the aliens never saw coming. "Sir, we are taking heavy casualties," Sub-Commander Veltak reported to Grand Admiral Kexter. "Our formation is breaking apart. The humans are attacking from directions we did not expect with weapons we did not know they possessed." Kexter stared at the tactical displays in growing horror. His mighty fleet, which had conquered entire star systems, was being torn apart by an enemy that fought without honor or military discipline. The humans were using every dirty trick and unconventional tactic they could think of. They turned mining equipment into weapons, disguised military installations as civilian facilities, and attacked from directions that no civilized military would consider. "Regroup the fleet," Kexter ordered desperately. "Form defensive positions around the command ship." The final battle took place in Earth's orbit, where the smoking remains of the Zephyrian fleet made their last desperate stand. Of the 20 dreadnoughts that had entered the solar system, only 6 remained operational. Most of the cruisers had been destroyed or damaged beyond repair. Grand Admiral Kexter's perfect formation had become a scattered collection of burning wreckage floating in the void. But the aliens were not finished yet. Kexter had gathered his surviving ships around his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, in a defensive circle near Earth's moon. The massive command vessel was the largest ship in the Zephyrian fleet, armed with enough weapons to destroy an entire planet. Even damaged and alone, it was still a deadly threat to everything humanity had built. Captain Jake Morrison studied the tactical display on the bridge of the Defiance. His ship had survived the battle so far, but it was running on emergency power and held together by Dr. Kate Sullivan's repairs and pure determination. Around him, the bridge crew looked exhausted but determined. They had come too far to give up now. "Kate, how much more can the engines take?" Jake asked over the intercom. "Honestly, I am amazed they are still working," came Kate's voice from the engine room. "The modifications were never designed for this kind of sustained combat. We might get one more burst of maximum speed, but after that, we will be lucky if we can maintain normal velocity," Jake nodded grimly. One more burst would have to be enough. On his flagship, Grand Admiral Kexter was making a decision that would define his legacy in the Empire. His fleet was destroyed, his mission was a failure, and his reputation was ruined. But he still had one chance to salvage something from this disaster. If he could not conquer Earth, he could at least make sure it burned. Set course directly for the human homeworld, Kexter ordered his navigation officer. We will ram their planet at maximum speed. The impact will cause massive destruction and show the galaxy what happens to species that dare to resist the Empire. The Eternal Dominion began moving toward Earth, its massive engines pushing the damaged vessel faster than its designers had ever intended. The ship's hull groaned under the stress, but it held together long enough to build dangerous momentum. If the flagship reached Earth's atmosphere, the collision would kill millions of people and devastate the planet's surface. All ships, this is Admiral Grant, came the urgent transmission from Earth Command. The enemy flagship is on a collision course with Earth. All available vessels converge on the Eternal Dominion immediately. We have to stop that ship before it reaches the planet. Jake looked around his bridge at the tired faces of his crew. Commander Ben Carter was still at his post despite a bandaged head wound. The communications officer was working with equipment that sparked and smoked. Even the ship's artificial gravity was fluctuating, making everyone feel slightly dizzy. Ben, signal all ships in the area, Jake said quietly. Tell them the Defiance is going to intercept the flagship. Any vessel that can still fight should join us. Within minutes, Jake could see other ships changing course to join his final attack. There was Captain Amy Walsh in the battered Wolverine. Her mining ship held together with emergency patches and determination. Commander Ray Thompson brought 3 surviving vessels from his asteroid squadron. Even some of the damaged ships from the Mars Defense Force were limping toward the battle zone, that it was not a large fleet. Most of the human vessels showed obvious signs of combat damage. Several were leaking atmosphere and running on backup power. But they were all that stood between Earth and the alien flagship's suicidal charge. The battle began when the human ships entered weapons range of the Eternal Dominion. The massive alien vessel was larger than all of the human ships combined, and its weapons were still functioning despite the damage it had suffered. Energy beams lanced out from the flagship, destroying one of Ray Thompson's miners in a brilliant explosion. But the humans had learned something important during the long battle. They no longer tried to fight the aliens according to conventional military rules. Instead, they used every dirty trick and desperate tactic they could think of. Amy Walsh brought the Wolverine in close to the flagship's hull, using her ship's mechanical arms to grab onto the alien vessel's external equipment. Her mining lasers began cutting through critical systems, while the Zephyrians tried unsuccessfully to shake her loose. Ray Thompson's surviving ships spread out around the Eternal Dominion, using their converted mining charges as improvised torpedoes. The explosions were not powerful enough to destroy the flagship, but they damaged sensors and weapon systems that the aliens needed to defend themselves. Jake brought the Defiance directly toward the flagship's bridge, pushing Kate's experimental engines to their absolute limits. The ship shook violently as the modified drive system struggled to maintain the incredible speeds he was demanding. "Kate, I need everything you can give me," Jake called over the intercom. "We are going to ram their command section." "Jake, if we hit them at this speed, we will be destroyed too," Kate replied from the engine room. "I know," Jake said simply, "but it is the only way to stop them from reaching Earth." Dr. Kate Sullivan looked around the engine room at the equipment she had spent so much time modifying and improving. The fusion reactors were running far beyond safe parameters. The containment fields were fluctuating dangerously. But the systems were still holding together, powered by human engineering and sheer stubbornness. "Computer, prepare for emergency core ejection," Kate said quietly. Then she activated the ship-wide communication system. "All hands, this is Dr. Sullivan. Evacuate the engine sections immediately. We are going to overload the fusion reactors." Jake understood what Kate was planning. Instead of simply ramming the alien flagship, she was going to turn the Defiance into a massive bomb. The explosion would be powerful enough to cripple even the Eternal Dominion, but it would also destroy their own ship completely, all crew members. "This is the captain," Jake announced over the ship's intercom. "Prepare for impact. It has been an honor serving with all of you." But as the Defiance streaked toward the enemy flagship, something unexpected happened. The other human ships began moving to join the attack. Amy Walsh brought the Wolverine alongside the Defiance, her mining ship keeping pace despite its damaged engines. Ray Thompson's squadron formed up behind them, their converted miners following the flagship into what would certainly be a suicide. "Attack! Captain Morrison, this is Captain Walsh," came Amy's voice over the communication channel. "The Wolverine is with you. Let's finish this together." "All ships, this is Commander Thompson," came Ray's voice. "The mining squadron is ready to complete the mission. These aliens wanted to see what our scrap ships could do. Time to show them." Grand Admiral Kexter watched in horror as the human vessels approached his flagship. Even facing certain death, these primitive beings were still fighting. They had no hope of survival, but they were willing to sacrifice themselves to protect their homeworld. "Increase speed," Kexter ordered desperately. "We must reach the planet before they can stop us." But it was too late. The human ship struck the Eternal Dominion simultaneously from multiple directions. The Defiance hit the flagship's bridge section, while the Wolverine's mining lasers cut through critical systems. Ray Thompson's squadron targeted the engine compartments with everything they had left. Kate Sullivan's plan worked perfectly. The Defiance's overloaded fusion reactors exploded with the force of a small star, tearing through the alien flagship's hull like paper. The explosion was so bright that it could be seen from Earth's surface, a brilliant flash of light that marked the end of the Zephyrian invasion. When the light faded, the Eternal Dominion was gone. The massive alien flagship had been reduced to glowing debris scattered across space. The few remaining Zephyrian ships fled the solar system in panic, carrying news of their defeat back to the Empire. On Earth, billions of people looked up at the sky and saw the flash of the final explosion. They knew that somewhere in the darkness above them, brave human crews had sacrificed everything to protect their world. The heroes of the battle would be remembered forever, but they would never see the civilization they had saved. In the days that followed, recovery teams searched the debris field for survivors. Amazingly, they found some. Captain Amy Walsh and half of her crew were rescued from the Wolverine's emergency pods. Commander Ray Thompson survived when his ship's bridge section was blown clear of the explosion. Even some crew members from the Defiance were found alive in damaged escape pods, but many others were lost, including Captain Jake Morrison and Dr. Kate Sullivan. They had given their lives to prove that human courage and determination could overcome any enemy, no matter how powerful or advanced. The Zephyrian Empire never returned to human space. The news of their defeat spread across the galaxy, carried by the surviving alien ships that had fled the battle. Other civilizations learned that humanity was not a species to be underestimated or mocked. The scrap ships that the aliens had laughed at became symbols of human ingenuity and determination. A victory at Earth proved that superior technology meant nothing against opponents who were willing to fight with everything they had. The Empire's mighty Armada had been turned to cinders by an enemy they had dismissed as primitive and weak.